but I guess there may be somebody watching it online somewhere. Testing. Can you hear me now?
Try 10. Senator McLaren, see if your microphone's working. Josh, see if yours is working. No. No. Hey, I'm just trying to fit in.
Doing a good job.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Do we have anybody signed up to speak? You sitting here counting your money while we're waiting on you.
No, I'm just kind of doing a little mathematics on it. It makes sense or not.
What is this on the sheriff's?
Sure, yeah. So their dues are going to increase, it looks like 144%. Their income's going to increase 133%. Payments returned to any person who becomes a member owner after this thing. If they're convicted of a felony, it looks like they lose their entire members. I think so good too. But I want to make sure this purchase of personal services, I think, is where they come on and they can buy back by paying back a portion. I want to make sure that's what that is. This purchase.
Well, I'm glad you're here. You're the financial man I depend on.
You might be on.
Test. Do we have?
And we, of course, introduced this last session, and we do have a up-to-date current actuarial study that is in your file. The Sheriff's Retirement Fund was established in 1963. It provides minimum retirement benefits for those who have served as an elected sheriff for a minimum of 8 years and have reached age 55. The fund requires no state funding. Again, no state funding, and exists through member dues, member fees for the purchase of prior military and or law enforcement service, fees collected in civil actions, and investment income. Currently, there are 194 retired sheriffs and or beneficiaries supported by the fund, with another 8 who will soon reach the retirement age and begin receiving benefits. There are also 154 sitting sheriffs who are members of the fund and will eventually receive benefits upon retirement. The monthly benefit is based on a current amount of $172.47 multiplied by the years of service, and the fund balance as of September 30th, 2023 was $101,758,000. It's funded at 102% of the actuarial amount that it should be, so it's slightly overfunded. This bill authorizes several important improvements to the program. Section 1 increases the multiplier from $37.50 to $65. Increases the dues from $37.50 to $65 per month that the sheriffs must pay to purchase up to 4 years prior military service and up to 4 years prior law enforcement service. A maximum of 8 years prior service can be purchased. This is the first time that's been modified since 1994. Section 2 increases from $45 to $65 the monthly dues paid by sheriffs currently holding office. Section 3 establishes a $2 fee to be collected by the clerks of court in criminal cases where defendants have been sentenced to diversion programs rather than incarceration. Section 4 increases from $1 to $5 the fee collected for service of process in civil actions. Section 5 increases the member's death benefit from $15,000 to $35,000. And Section 6 is a new section that prohibits payments from the fund to retired sheriffs convicted of felony offenses related to the office of sheriff. Those are the proposed changes
Thank you, Mr.
to the
Chairman.
program. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions? Let's see. Senator McClure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and definitely have spoken already this session about how important I think it is to enhance benefits for our law enforcement, public safety officials to get good people to stay in the jobs. My concern is always with using criminal penalty fees, any sort of fee that comes with either, adjudication formally or a pretrial diversion to help fund something like this. Has there been any exploration of a way that we can fund the piece of it, the lines 76 to 87, without putting that extra $2 on a fine? I know $2 doesn't sound like a lot, but in general, it's sort of a principle thing for me about not wanting to put the fees on the backs of people convicted of crimes, or it's certainly not give them a reason not to do diversion. Again, I know it's a small number. Has there been any exploration of ways that we could try to raise money other than that?
Let's see. Senator Harbin, did you? We'll see if someone's got an answer to your
I don't have an
question.
answer on that from my standpoint. That's more of a commentary, am I correct, of you personally?
Well, it's a commentary with an open heart, which
Okay.
is, if there's a way to think about a different mechanism, I would love to explore that. I candidly don't know quite yet where I would be on the overall bill, or the yes, no votes, how they shake out. I just wanted to raise that issue first and talk about it. I'm inclined to support the bill, obviously, for the purposes I opened my comment with.
Right.
But I just, in general, I have a track record of voting against increases to fees that are used to pay, either salaries or benefits.
I understand. Thank you. Let's see. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Walker, can you go back to number 6 again about sheriffs convicted of felonies? Explain that again. Where is that?
Section 6. is
Okay.
the last part of the bill on page 8. A sheriff that is convicted of a felony
Related to the job only.
related to his job
What?
would not be eligible to receive the retirement.
Benefit package of, okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. This is for sheriffs only, correct?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Purchase of credible service, is that where they can buy back? They can pay into the system? Is that what that is? Purchase of credible service, the cost?
My understanding, yes, sir, it's increasing the cost to buy. We're increasing the benefits, so we're also increasing the cost to buy the creditable service, and it's capped at eight years that you can purchase.
That's actually buying backwards, am I correct, is what I understand? That you come into office, you can buy back as far as that. You can go back 8 years and pay that from that standpoint. Okay, very understandable from that standpoint. The dues are increased. That's not bad because that's y'all paying that. That's not a problem. The death benefit, I think, hey, a good deal from that standpoint that should be paid from that standpoint. And I think that with what we see when there's a death among law enforcement, really the survivors are one of the things that we need to take care of. So I would even push beyond the 35,000 because that doesn't get you very far. But the fact that you're where you are actuarially, you're sound, raising those limits, I can see no reason not to pass something like this. It makes sense, and I think it's a good bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I really quickly?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This idea just occurred to me. I think it would make sense to put more of the onus on the civil case side because y'all have to do work in civil cases a lot of people don't even think about, right? Like serving people, that cost is built into filing an action for most, all civil cases typically, unless you get a private process server. Just something to mull over before we get to a formal amendment. I would be open to striking the criminal pretrial piece of this. And which I would imagine the diversion piece is not even the biggest piece of the criminal revenue, and increasing instead of that $5 number, doing like $6 or $7 for the civil case to offset, taking away from the criminal piece. If the committee would be open to considering that, that's one solution that I think would make me enthusiastic about supporting the bill as a whole.
Mr. Chairman, and I don't know as much about this process as probably Senator McLaurin, but it does seem like to me that a diversion versus incarceration would be more work on the sheriff. Would it not?
I think for me, and I hate anytime anybody in this building talks about principles, everybody starts to roll their eyes, right? But for me, it's just a lot easier in terms of the politics of it, in terms of the philosophy of what are we doing in these cases when it comes to our interaction with the public. I'm just a lot more comfortable charging a dollar or two extra for civil cases, where I'm trying to emphasize sheriffs do a lot of work in civil cases. It's not just the criminal cases. Right. So I think this increase to $5 is appropriate. And with all of the legal costs that go into the average lawsuit, $1 to $5 in a civil case is not going to break the bank. Going to 6 or 7, I think, is appropriate. My concern is just what it means when in criminal cases, when we take away somebody's liberty, we are also we're funding salaries and benefits based on that. I think is something that our side of the aisle at least has an issue with sometimes, and is just good practice to keep those things separate.
What line are you referring to?
If I did an amendment, Mr. Chairman, I would strike 76 through 87, and what I would do is amend 105 and 116 to go up.
76 through what?
76 through 87 would be the strike and renumber accordingly, and then it would be 105 and 116. I'd go up either to $6 or $7, whatever the will of the committee would be.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak to
Please.
the
Sure.
pre-adjudication piece? The $2 piece, if you all remember, over the past 12 years, we've done a great deal in our state on criminal justice reform. And one of the things we did is in certain criminal cases, for certain types of offenses, we didn't push them through the court process as normally. We used accountability courts, we used diversion programs. And when that happened, on these pre-adjudication cases or adjudicated cases, there was generally no incarceration, and there was a lot of times no extended probation. So there was no adjudication of guilt in the case, which meant there was also no fine at all. So to rectify the loss of revenue in other areas, you all chose to, in other retirement systems, the POAB fund for one, you allowed them a $5 fee, as we have asked for $2, with the principle in mind that these folks didn't pay a fine, so $2 on a criminal case seemed logical to us, not trying to overbite the apple, if you will. I certainly understand. We've heard that. You and I have talked about that before. So it's a principal issue for us. Unfortunately, throughout our country, throughout the history of our country, a lot of times we have considered that offenders ought to pay something in addition to what the incarcerated or detained part of the sentence ought to be. So in keeping with that traditional thought, that's the reason this provision was in there. I will say this, and I'm not the expert on what requires additional actuary study, but we don't have time to do any more actuary study, I don't think. There are experts in the room that might believe that. So the sheriff's contemplated this. I'm sorry I failed to introduce Robert Barkley. He's the sheriff in Morgan County. He is chairman of our Sheriff's Retirement Fund Board of Commissioners. This particular provision was talked about a lot, both through the Sheriff's Association side with all their members, as well as the board. And the board itself asked the association to make this legislation a priority, inclusive of that particular provision. So from the perspective of stopping this, something that we've worked on probably for 8 years now, that we think is a very sound, logic, responsible approach to bolstering the fund, because while it does say in there at 102%, and we are proud of that, it's because of the management of this small fund over the years by this Board of Trustees on the investment side that we even have what we have. However, I will say this, if we don't get some more revenue infused into the fund outside of investment income, which we all know we can't depend on because of the stock markets, our board has already made the decision through our actuaries' recommendations that these families that now depend on this retirement, and let me say this, not every retired sheriff has anything but this in Social Security. So if we don't do something to help bolster the revenues, and Senator, I know you're supporting the bill, I'm not trying to imply you're not, we're not going to be able to give, or the board will not be able to give any kind of COLAs, and the current law allows the board to give up to 3% annually, 1.5% in July and 1.5% in January, with the actuary's recommendations. And we've just had a meeting in the last few weeks, and that won't happen going down the road unless we can figure out ways to infuse some more revenue in there. So the $2 thing, with all due respect, came from the sheriffs. They looked at what other retirement systems had. They thought it was fair. So thank you for allowing me to say a few words about that.
And in full disclosure, I opposed the other fees that you're
Yeah,
referring to. That
Yes, sir.
right. So
Yes,
it's
sir.
not. I fully acknowledge that in terms of parity, if you embrace that idea as a whole and you're willing to do that, then you don't have parity right now. So I want to acknowledge that.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's see. Senator Good.
I was just going to say, for me, just thinking about that, I'm starting to sound like Senator again for me. But I understand what you're talking about with the $2. But at the same time, I also see that these sheriffs, that if they do something wrong, they've lost everything that they've paid in too. So it's almost like, am I wrong about that? If they get convicted of a felony, then they'll never be able to take anything out of the retirement plan. They would forfeit everything they had contributed, is what I'm trying to say.
They would probably get their dues back, but they wouldn't get any retirement benefits off of that. And that 170, whatever it was, $2.47 times the years of credible service, that part would go away. But if they paid in dues for 8 years, they would get that now $65 a month back for 8 years. So they would get their money back, but they would have no long-term benefit from the retirement fund.
But if they'd paid in for 25 years, they'd get back, if they get what they've paid back in, they'd be like getting a third of what they put in over a 25-year period is what I'm trying to
Yeah,
say.
they wouldn't get much back.
Right.
It's not enough to retire on. But however, if you commit an offense in conjunction with your office and the trust the public is putting you, then this is a fair and equitable way to respond to that, we would think.
I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a monetary penalty for the sheriffs as well. It's not just a, if maybe I'm thinking, you understand what I'm saying?
Senator, I'm predictably going to see that as apples and oranges, but I get what you're saying. I think the concern that we have is if we tie where our bread is buttered as public officials to someone else paying a fine in a criminal case, it makes it hard to get out of the mindset of that skin in the game being financial. And look, this is all the crazy liberal cash bail stuff too, and you know it and I know it. But I think the key is that, you know, we're going to keep making this argument over the years that what we don't want is a system of wealth-based detention where people who have more money have an easier time through the criminal legal system than people with less. And the solution is not to make the criminal legal system harder on everybody. It's just to recognize these inequalities. And again, this is with full acknowledgement that $2 is $2, right? But that's the kind of philosophical principle thing of it is we don't want to expand a system where we're charging people money when we're already taking their liberty away. That's the argument, right?
Senator Harbin.
Thank you. I think that if we look at this, the fact that they're willing to pay their money in, just like any contribution, each person is paying that in as a self-funding issue. The $2 I understand, but we were working on this last year. It did not get through. Am I correct on this?
Well, it was a 2-year bill.
It was a 2-year
yes,
bill.
We
So
have worked on this particular issue for about 4 sessions now.
Okay. That's what I was thinking. We've worked on, I've seen this before,
Yes, sir.
and it hadn't moved forward. And I really believe this. I was talking to Sheriff Dix in Spalding County today, and we had a death down there. I just really appreciate the sheriffs of our state. I think this is not excessive in any format. The fact that they're paying their dues as they are, and you're monitoring and doing it yourself, if you will. I think the $2 is not unreasonable. We are paying taxes already from that standpoint just to support law enforcement, and I don't think that's out of reason. And I really would like to see us pass this as it is. I believe it'd be good for our sheriffs, good for our state, and good for our citizens long term to take care of the people who take care of us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I would just reiterate really what Senator Harbin said, and I get Senator McLaurin's principled and philosophical objection, but especially in the case when they're not even paying a fine. I mean, $2 is certainly less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks and probably less than the cost of a beer at most anywhere. I think it's so nominal. I hope we will not hold this up over such just a nominal amount of money. I think the sheriffs deserve us to move on this.
Thank you. I too want to salute the sheriffs. I know when you call 911 at 2 o'clock in the morning, I know who's going to respond. It's going to be the sheriff's department, nobody else. They do it 24/7. And I appreciate you, and we want to do more. I appreciate Senator McLaurin's remarks, and I think as we move forward, I think that might be for future benefit what we start working on, that we can reward the sheriffs more into your retirement system by maybe going in that direction too, that we continue working on that. We've got to do more for you to help you to attract deputies. I know one sheriff told me his county pays $50,000 a year for a sheriff, for a deputy. He had 1 applicant last year. And we've got to do more for you, and we appreciate what you do every day. And I thank you for that.
Thank you, Chairman.
What it brings up, we had an amendment on this bill, and this is where I need legislative counsel. We had an amendment on this bill last session by Senator Tillery. We reverted back to the original bill and have removed his amendments. Is there anything that we need to do here in order to do that, or?
The LC number 560100S is newly drafted to
Tillery just texted.
include the language from the original bill.
Okay.
That language was studied, investigated. I believe that has, I believe you all have copies of that. It's attached to the bill. I don't believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, that 560100S was actually adopted. So I believe you have to adopt the sub, and then you can pass it out since it's already been certified and investigated.
So we don't have to deal with his, we just move forward on this, okay. All right. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, at the appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion to pass.
I think now's the appropriate time, Senator.
Second.
You want to read the LS number? So you're making a motion, LC 560100S, do pass,
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
and have a second by Senator Harbin. Senator McLaren?
Mr. Chairman, I will formally move the amendment, if this is the appropriate time to at least put it before the committee. The amendment would be striking lines 76 through 87 and renumbering appropriately. And then on line 105, changing $5 to $7, and on line 116, changing $5 to $7. That would be the amendment I'd put forward for the committee's consideration.
All right. So we have a motion for an amendment.
I'll second.
You have a second? Any discussion on your amendment?
Even if y'all vote the amendment down, I am personally going to support the bill, but I think, it's important for us to keep having this conversation, and I do appreciate y'all taking the time to do it today.
Oh, and I want to continue the conversation by all means. And I think that's where we're going to improve what we can do for our sheriffs in this state.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other question or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of the amendment, raise your hand. Have 3, 4. All oppose the amendment, raise your hand. 4. The amendment fails. Thank you for the amendment. Thank you for your work. We will continue to work on this. Now back to the bill. All in favor of the Senate Bill 322, if you will raise your hand. Any opposed? Unanimous. You have your bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, be happy to talk to you all about that at any time, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we got one more bill right quick.
Is this Chairman Walker here?
Chairman Walker's bill.
Walker's here again?
No, we're not voting on it. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to hear Senate Bill 206. This is for hearing only. We will not be taking a vote. I realize other senators today, and as schedules go, someone might need to leave, so we will be sharing the information on this other bill with all of you. So, Senator Walker, I'll give it to you at this time, please, sir.
Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this today. I want to hear from Mr. Potvin. He's done a lot of work on this, if you don't mind. But if you remember last year, we started talking about the retirement benefits for members of PESER, the Public School Employment Retirement System. And Chairman Robertson, he was chairman at the time, we had a town hall type meeting in Columbus on a Saturday, and we heard from a lot of members of PCERs that testified that they were not covered by Social Security. And so because of that testimony, we decided we needed to investigate that further, and we made some inquiries about that, and I've learned, and I hope Mr. Potvin will correct me if I misspeak, but I've learned that the school systems are required by federal law to either provide Social Security benefits for their PCERS employees, school bus drivers, cafeteria workers, custodians, maintenance people, etc., or another qualified benefit plan and when I say qualified, it's recognized by the IRS as a eligible and legitimate alternative to Social Security. And in light of those conversations, we thought there might be some confusion with our school districts as to what their obligation was to these employees, and we decided to ask for a survey of the school districts to see how the school districts were handling this. And so we did get a survey done, and we've got the results and have had them for a while, and I just wanted those results to be shared with the committee, and then maybe we could discuss next steps if the committee feels like there needs to be next steps, because we got good response, very good response from the school districts, but we didn't get response from every school district. And then some of the responses we're still not exactly clear as to what they're doing. So with that, Mr. Chairman, if you're okay, I'd like Mr. Potvin to tell us what they found.
Certainly. Mr. Potvin, welcome. We appreciate you being here, and thank you for all you do. Thank you. I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was an excellent introduction, Mr. Chairman, so thank you for that. So just to give a brief summary of the survey that we did, we have identified 186 school systems. Every one of them got a copy of the survey, which was basically designed to ask some simple questions. Are your people covered by Social Security? If not, are they covered by one of these qualified, what we call replacement plans? It's not uncommon to have a replacement plan, but not all plans that might be offered would qualify as a replacement plan. So to give you an example, if the plan in question is a defined contribution plan, it must provide for at least a 7.5% contribution to be made either by the employee or the employer or some combination of both on an annual basis. If it's a defined benefit plan, broadly speaking, it has to provide for at least a 1.5% of pay, of 3-year average pay per year service. So the ERS new plan qualifies as a replacement plan. The ERS GSEPS plan technically does not, nor does the public school employees pension plan. So if the school systems are not offering Social Security, hopefully they have another plan in place that meets those definitions. So we sent out the survey to all 186 school systems, and with some effort, took a couple follow-ups, but we were able to get responses from 170 of them for a 91% response rate. That does suggest a follow-up. There are 16 school systems that we have not heard from. Might be our fault. We might not have had good contact information or whatever it is. So we've certainly got that as a potential to-do item. Of the people who did respond, the 170 school systems that responded, 144 of them represented as participating, as having their members participate in Social Security. 24 did not. They represented that their participants did not participate in Social Security. Of those 170, about 86 of them, or just over half, stated that they had PCERS members that are also enrolled in a local retirement plan of some kind. Does that plan qualify as a local retirement system? Their representations to us, 28 of them said yes, 48 of them said no, 10 of them did not say anything. We didn't get a response on that particular question from them. And then the types of local retirement plans being offered, only 3 were defined benefit, 55 were defined contribution, and 28 did not respond to that. All right, so there are some clear follow-ups that are necessary. We don't yet quite have a link between those who say they are not participating in Social Security and those who say that they have a replacement plan. So we need to ask some follow-up questions to make sure that we're drawing those lines together. We need to follow up with the 16 non-respondent school systems. That's first and foremost. I would recommend that we review a sample of the 144 school systems that are saying that their people are in Social Security to make sure that we're satisfied that, generally speaking, they are compliant. The 29 school systems that are not reporting to Social Security, we need to try to make sure that a replacement plan is in place, and those who represent having a replacement plan, I think that would, and relying on that to meet this qualification, I think some follow-up would be required to take a look at the plan documents and to make a judgment on whether or not we believe that is in fact a qualified replacement plan. So we've sort of done the first layer, but I think there is some more potential work to be done to satisfy the questions that the chairman and the former chairman have raised with us.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Senator Walker.
So some more further background on this, and just to refresh the committee, PACERS members, the state funds PACERS. So there's 2 funding sources for PACERS. The employees that participate pay, I think, $10 a month for 9 months of the year, so $90 a month. The rest of it is funded by the state of Georgia. The local school districts put no money into PACERS at all. As a business owner and somebody that has employees and a payroll to meet, I understand that Social Security costs the employer 7.5%. So the way Social Security works, the employees contribute, well, it's 7.65% of their gross salary, and then the employer matches that 7.65%. So it just occurred to me that if they're hiring these people and basically they're low wage earners anyway, and they're not contributing locally to any kind of retirement plan, Social Security being the preferred one, then they're to me doing a disservice to these employees, mostly hourly, low-wage employees. So I'm trying to get to the bottom of, what are the school districts doing for their school bus drivers and cafeteria workers as far as contributing something toward their retirement. And I would like to see us flesh this on out further. I don't know if the state auditor is the appropriate person to ask for this, or if Mr. Potvin, he's been running herd on this for me. I greatly appreciate that. So, I had a bill saying that they had to be in Social Security, and I realized that there were alternatives that would satisfy that legal requirement, so I kind of backed off the bill. But I just want to get to the bottom of these, certainly the ones that didn't respond, and then the ones that responded and said, we have an alternate plan, but it's not qualified. We need to know, well, what's your explanation for that? And then the ones that say they've got an alternate plan and it is qualified, we kind of need to verify that it is a qualified plan. Is that pretty much where we're at?
I think that's a good description. As far as our role in this, one of my titles is as the state Social Security administrator. What that has meant traditionally is that we've been responsible for maintaining the 218 agreements and conducting or sort of guiding the referendum process for those who want to join at various points. Not a lot of activity in most particular cases, but we're not experts in Social Security per se. What I would say to you is certainly following up on the 16 non-respondent school systems is something that we can do. I have talked to State Auditor Griffin about that. They have a contact database that we may be able to tap into to help us with that follow-up. So I feel that that's something that we can take on. A sampling of the 144 school systems reporting to Social Security. I would lean on the auditors to help us with a process for making sure that we do a fair sampling and conduct I wouldn't call it an audit, but a review that matters statistically speaking. When we get into the ones that are representing that there's a replacement plan or maybe not having a replacement plan, this is where our expertise gets a little bit thin. To have us review those plans and make a determination is probably beyond the scope of our particular abilities. We probably have to go outside for some kind of Social Security expert or a legal expert of some kind to help us out with something like that.
I have a question. Why would some of the schools do an alternative plan rather than comply with Social Security?
It can be less expensive for them. That's one reason. There are others potentially, but that is one reason. So the defined contribution, I'll give you an example. We administer a defined contribution plan called the Georgia Defined Contribution Plan. That is for part-time and seasonal employees who are in positions that if they were full-time employees, they would potentially be in ERS, but since they're part-time, they don't qualify for ERS. There's still that requirement, either a replacement plan or Social Security. The state has elected not to provide Social Security. The GDCP, as we call it, is a replacement plan. But it's basically just a forced savings plan for them. They have to require that, they have to contribute that 7.5% to us. The state doesn't make any contribution at all. So the state doesn't have to pay Social Security, and it's not required to pay into this particular plan for them.
And you know, them just stating that they have that plan, there's no oversight to that plan.
Right.
There's nobody seeing that it's actually being maintained, kept up. I thank you for that information. I think we might need to look in that further. That we might need to go back to that requiring Social Security. We've got to make sure that these vulnerable people are not taken advantage of.
There are potholes to taking somebody who is partway through their career and putting them into Social Security in the form of two offsets that some of you are going to be familiar with, what's called the WEP, the WEP, and the GPO offsets. One has to do with individuals who had employment that was not covered by Social Security at some point during their career, and the other has to do with those who are trying to qualify for spousal benefits, but again, based on employment that wasn't necessarily covered by Social Security. And if you drop somebody into Social Security at a late point in their career, they're going to end up paying the 6.2% Social Security premium and not really get any benefit out of it. Certainly from a going forward, anybody hired after a certain date perspective, I can see the rationale for it, but we would have to give very careful consideration to how we bring in mid-career employees to this.
I can see that. Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to recognize Chairman Randy Robertson being here, who chaired this committee before me, and appreciate your leadership and wanted to see if you had anything to say. We welcome you being here. And we'd be...
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and I appreciate that. And seeing this on the agenda, this is something that myself and Chairman Walker got very passionate about, and we weren't looking for a fight, but we were here one day and having a conversation with Jim and his entire team, and you know, no matter what was said in the chamber today about how we care about employees, labor, the people that do the job, we very much care about our state employees, and Chairman Walker and myself bonded over this issue, and he drove over to Columbus and we had a town hall meeting, and he and I both, I think, were absolutely, we were mad when we got into a room full of these employees that transport children to and from school every day, that make sure they're fed and taken care of, and that make sure our schools are clean and well kept, and maintenance is done, and how they were being treated as second-class citizens by our public school systems throughout the state. And I think this is an example of the dedication that Jim and them have had. And Chairman Walker has become the champion of this cause. And with your leadership, I have no doubt that we're going to be able to solve this problem as meticulous as you are and thorough. And I just really appreciate you continuing this fight so that we can get to this, because there are a lot of good men and women who have sacrificed a lot of their time and life into doing this while working second and third jobs where they actually make more money, but they stay in this job because of a passion they have and for the little bit of benefits that come with it. So I just want to thank you for keeping this on your radar and continuing the fight forward.
Thank you. Appreciate that very much, sir. Thank you. Chairman Walker, you have any other thing to add?
No, sir. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this again. I do want to, I guess I'll point out the state auditor, it would be logical person to gather some additional information for us, because they're in the school systems. They're part of their charge is to audit the school system. So they're in there doing audits anyway. And if they could add this to their checklist, it's not like they'd have to make a extra trip, or I don't know how often they get around to each school district, but I do know they audit them.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much. If no other member has any questions or input, then we'll stand adjourned. Thank you, Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.